Hey guys, so what I have here is a quite interesting little product. It's the DarwinFPV 18650 nano long range, and this thing is basically a remix of one of my designs, the one I put on Thingiverse, but it has a few, let's say, modifications that are quite interesting. So what I'm going to do in this video today is take a close look at this frame and how this thing is set up overall and compare it to what you can basically DIY build at home with the Thingiverse pages and the Recon Free that you can buy in most shops like Banggood or the Recon FPV online store. So if you're familiar with the original Nano Long Range, the one that is on Thingiverse, you'll notice that this is very similar in the overall geometry, and some parts are obviously the same. So the bottom part here is not really modified, the front part is the same. And this means they sort of remixed the design, which in principle they wouldn't be allowed to do for a commercial product. But after after they got a few YouTube comments hinting them towards the fact that this is violating some copyright laws, they actually proposed to give me a share of the profits for this product. So I think this is fine. This basically makes this a legit remix that is not stolen basically from Thingiverse. All right, so with that out of the way, let's look at this frame a little bit closer, because while this is a remix, it has a few substantial changes, or say maybe two main changes. The first one is that the battery tray, this compartment here, is fully integrated in the print. So the Recon Free and the original Thingiverse thing, you needed this 3D, this injection molded part here that is screwed on top of the frame where the battery goes in. This here has this basically integrated with the arms and the front part. Now, the advantage is that this looks very elegant and it's a bit lighter. The downside, obviously, if you break an arm on this quad here, you'll have to replace the entire thing and completely rebuild it. So that's a bit of a disadvantage. But I would say if you're really into 3D printing and you want a fully 3D printed quad, this is actually something that is quite nice if you're a bit, a bit geeking out on 3D printed stuff, because this is not also it's not only a regular 3D print, it's a multi-jet fusion print. So this is nylon, this is stronger than what you will usually print at home, and it does also have a surface treatment. So usually these nylon prints are really rough. This one, as you can see, has a nice shiny surface. So there is a sort of additional abrasive treatment where the surface here is made to be nicer. So in terms of 3D printing and technology, this is a very interesting product, because it is, I think it's really the only fully 3D printed drone that you can buy on the market commercially. Obviously, all FPV drones, or almost all FPV drones, have 3D printed parts, but this thing here really is exclusively 3D printed. So I think that makes it kind of cool. I have to admit, it's not, from a functionality and practicality standpoint, it doesn't make too much sense. The Recon Free actually, it makes more sense. The plastic parts are injection molded. On the newer versions, also this bottom part and the front part is all injection molded, so it's more robust, and it has carbon arms, so you can replace the arms. It's more practical, especially if you crash from time to time. But this year, from the point of view of technology feasibility and engineering, is a very, very cool thing, because it's pretty much the only commercially available 3D printed drone. Now, apart from this super interesting frame, I'd say this is basic nano long range stuff. So we have a small caddx and this is all analog. Then we do have some 1103 motors. So I think these are pretty much the same volume as the 1202.5 that are on the Recon Free. 12,000 kV is also quite close in kV. So I would say this is a regular 1S drivetrain. Let's take a closer look at the electronics, and quick disclaimer here: I broke off the USB on this quad when I first plugged it in, so I had to swap out the flight controller. So this build is not as clean as it comes out of the factory. There's my own soldering and so on, so it's not super clean. But this is how it looks inside. It's quite nice that I stacked the VTX on top of the FC. It's all quite compact in here. Small capacitor. Doesn't seem to need a step-up voltage regulator. Seems to work fine like this. And this board is actually quite interesting. It's an F4, but it's a 1 to 3 S15 amp ESC. I think this is in terms of amp rating, this is the strongest 1S board that I'm aware of. So quite interesting. Yeah, but basic stuff in here, nothing too crazy, but also, I mean, this all looks quite solid and would probably work fine, and it's quite nicely built. And again, in the original, even cleaner than I built it here. Alright, so with the bottom screwed back on, let's take this thing outside and see how it performs. I'm not expecting something very surprising. It's probably going to perform quite close to the Record 3 and other nano long range builds, but let's take it outside and let's try this thing out. Alright, so unfortunately I just realized that the file on my SD card got corrupted, so I cannot edit in the DVR, but let me tell you that this thing actually flies very nicely. Darwin did a really solid job on the tune, and I would say this is at least on par with the Record 3, so I think you will be getting some very nice flight performance here out of this nano long range, and the 3D printed frame doesn't seem to impact this at all. Flies really nice. Alright, so what's the overall conclusion? And I would say, to do this conclusion, first of all, we need to discuss a bit what this whole nano long range concept is about, because the nano long range concept has never been fully about being your everyday quad. You fly all the time and it flies absolutely amazing. They all fly okay, but you know, it's not great. It's what you would expect from something that is powered by a single cell on only 3 volts. It is not super impressive. This entire thing always, and this entire hype always was about technology and feasibility and early adoption, to try something new and to prove that it's possible to fly on a single cell, which is something really cool and kind of satisfying if you just pop in these batteries and your quad is working. So I think in this way, this is really in the spirit of that, because it's fully 3D printed. There's no injection molded part. There's not a piece of carbon on there. So this kind of even takes the concept further. It's a commercially available, fully 3D printed quadcopter that is powered by just a single 18650 cell. Now, the downside of that is obviously it's even less practical than the Recon 3, because the Recon 3 is at least repairable. You have carbon arms, you have injection molded parts in the front taking the impact. So the Recon 3 will take more crashes and is obviously more durable than something that is fully 3D printed. And when it breaks, you have to replace this. I don't even know if they sell a spare frame. I think so, but you'll have to replace the entire frame, all the motors, everything. So you really need to completely rebuild it. So it's not going to be very practical. But then again, I think it's more of a proof of concept technology thing that is very nice if you're into these things. This might be something you just want to try and want to have and enjoy sometimes. Another advantage of the 3D printing here is that this thing is very cheap. It's a bit, I think it's like $30 cheaper than a Recon 3, because, I mean, obviously this is very easy to manufacture. The Recon 3 has injection molded parts, which are expensive to make because you need molds. It has carbon parts, it needs to be cut. The whole thing needs to be assembled. With these nylon prints here, basically what you do is you have a big industrial printer and you let that thing run all night. And in the morning, your prints pop out, you clean them up, you do the surface finishing, and you're basically done. This is very cheap to make, so that's another advantage of the 3D printing here. I mean, finally, in the end, I think it's up to you to pick which one is the most interesting for you and what you enjoy. You might even like to, you might prefer building your own entirely. And again, the files for the 3D printing are in Thingiverse, so feel free to get them. Print your own frame and do your own DIY builds. So, alright guys, hope you enjoyed this video. And if you enjoyed it, please subscribe. Bye bye.